welcome to all attendees from right across the world. We've got some Canadians here, some from the USA, and from all over. I'm Lynette Rudman, and I'll be your host tonight. And I'm coming to you live from Grahamstown in South Africa. This webinar will be recorded and it will be posted on our YouTube channel in a few days' time. So you can watch it again, or you can tell your friends to watch it when it's on YouTube. I'm not going to talk too much about Etienne. I'll let him introduce himself, but he's a brilliant birder, and I've got great respect for his birding talents, and he's quite outspoken as well, which I also enjoy. If he sees something that bothers him, he'll make it known, and I think it's so important, and I'm really looking forward to his talk tonight. Over to you, Etienne.
Thanks, Lynette. Yeah, just by way of introduction, this has been a passion of mine and an interest of mine for close on 30 years. Being involved before SABAP started with the whole issue of local and regional challenges, motivating people to get out birding, to grow birding, and to promote citizen science. And what we've seen in the last couple of years has been this absolute explosion of birding challenges driven by the development of technology. So I think the easiest is I've got some. It's yeah, just I think these are some preliminary thoughts, and I've been talking to quite a few people. I'll mention some of them in the actual presentation. And I thank you very much to all the people that completed the last minute survey that I distributed. I think I got about 136 replies in the last 2 days, which I thought was outstanding. So I think that gives an insight into what people are feeling and thinking, and I'll share some of those later on. But I think basically to start off, what I thought about is that this is thinking about the changing ecology of birding. Birding is changing, or certainly in my lifetime since I started birding, it's changed fundamentally. And the world is rapidly evolving. Technology is evolving. AI is arriving to take over. And how does all of this impact on birding? And I thought the most interesting angle was to look at the growth of different types of birding challenges and the sharing of those challenges on various smartphone and online platforms, and how this has impacted on the way we bird, on the way we experience our birding, and also our birding communities around the world. Essentially, what I'm going to cover just in terms of the talk is a little bit of history, and then talk about competitive birding, because I think competition, or let's say goal-oriented birding, is very fundamental to birding. The notion of a life list, but then also big lists, big years, big days, etc. And then we're going to have a look at regional challenges, listing clubs, how these have evolved around the world. Look, the talk is very Southern African centric, which is where I've done all my birding, or almost all my birding, and which I understand well. But a lot of what I'm talking about, I know from talking to clients who global birders, is very, very similar elsewhere in the world. And lots of the, I think, issues and principles that I'm going to touch on, I think, have a bearing on birding anywhere, whether it be in Australia or in India or in the US. And then we're going to talk about citizen science. I mean, the focus is the South African Bird Atlas Project, and the introduction of gamification, or the notion of gamifying the motivation to get people out there to Atlas to collect data, citizen science data, to do citizen science. And then to talk about Birdlasser, which I think has been the most profound, had the biggest impact of the different platforms, which appeared on the scene around 2014. But I'm going to touch on a number of other apps and platforms that I'm aware of, and maybe talk about some of the their pros and cons and some of the interesting things about them, because they're all quite different and they raise issues in relation to the interaction or the sort of point of meeting between data collection, citizen science, and building communities. And then last of all, local and private challenges. And I think that's kind of where I end up talking about the gamification and the communities and looking locally. And then I'm going to share some of the data from the actual survey. And then also, look, I do talk about eBird and other platforms, just touch on them. iNaturalist, Bindo, Birding, Birder, and the explosion of social media challenges, the leaderboards, and the whole notion of private challenges, because there's quite a lot of them arising. And then we'll come to all the issues. So I think where we start off with is the notion of the life list. You know, and I was introduced to the concept of a life list when I was 12 years old, and told that until I have a life list, I'm not a real birder. And certainly the experience of compiling one's life list and knowing that one has now seen 221 species, which is what it was when I first drew it up at the age of 12, it became quite an inspiration. And I think, you know, it's fundamental to this whole birding listing challenge thing, is that the process of setting goals and goal-oriented, that the game aspect, the game aspect of birding is that we want to see as many birds as we can in the region that we focus on. And that inspires us, it excites us, it gets us to plan, it gets us to budget, it gets us to move forward and, you know, and make birding really a key part of our lives. Until we have a life list, birding is just like a recreational thing that people do, you know, go out for a walk or go to a movie. It's the life list and the pursuit of the life list that make birding the focused, passionate hobby that it is for all of the people, I think, attending this webinar and thousands of others. It is the thing that bonds the tribe together. The tribe of birders is bonded by the notion of a life list. And then, but I think what has changed, obviously, in the last couple of decades would be that with the advent of the internet, you know, certainly before that, you had a life list. And when you met some birders, they would say, what's your life? But then with the advent of the internet, we had the leaderboard. And I remember the first time I had a look at Trevor Hardacre's website a long time ago when he first set it up. That was the South African Listing Club. I was quite horrified to find out how low down that leaderboard I actually was. So in South Africa, the Southern African Listing Club has been the dominant, for a long time, the dominant sort of focal point of most people's birding. And, you know, I think a word of gratitude has to be said towards Trevor Hardacre, who's really played over certainly the last 20, 25 years a major role in promoting and growing the notion of a listing club. And then through his rarity reports, basically the National Rarity Report was mainly focused for a long time on the rarities for Southern Africa. So the rarities, every rarity has its own specific unique context. And in the early days of Trevor's report, Southern African Rare Bird Report, the context was the Southern African Listing Club. The advent of regional and local listing challenges, you know, the fact that there are now all these different challenges in different places, has in fact changed the Rare Bird Report. So there are now rarities of a regional interest. So a black-collared barbet in Pretoria is completely uninteresting, or in the Eastern Cape, but in Cape Town, you know, it makes the news. It gets onto the news. But what's interesting is that I don't know, because I think it predates Trevor's role in this and predates the South African Listing Club. But for some reason, South Africa was never really the focus of listing. South Africa is a country. Whereas if you look around the world, most countries have very active listing clubs, and certainly BirdLife South Africa, and fact, if I go back in the history quite a few years back, I started on my website hosting a South African listing club focused on the boundaries of South Africa. But in the last decade or so, BirdLife South Africa has focused, because BirdLife South Africa is an organization whose jurisdiction is South Africa, political South Africa. It doesn't have jurisdiction over the Southern African region in terms of Botswana and Namibia, so it focuses on the Southern South African region alone. So that's just that's a more recent look at Zest for Birds and the different listing clubs that evolved after the mother of all listing clubs, which was SA 700 Club, which is actually Southern Africa, not South Africa. But then there were those that was extended so that people who hadn't yet got to 700 could put their names up. Couples, what is the couples total? Photographic Club, and then the different provinces. You'll notice that Gauteng is absent from that list. That was because long before this, we in Gauteng, particularly in Pretoria, established the wider Gauteng birding challenge, or wider Gauteng listing club, which focused on wider Gauteng, which I'll come to. But that's just what the South African listing club looks like on BirdLife South Africa's website. And when you reach one of the milestones, you get a nice lapel. So this brings us to one of the fundamentals of all these challenges and listing things, and that is recognition. That people get involved in these things to some extent or to a large extent to be rewarded by the community with some form of recognition. And hence that is why the milestones are so incredibly important, the 600, 700, 800 milestones. And as a guide that's taken many people to different parts of Southern Africa, it's always a special moment when someone reaches a magical milestone like a 800, an 850, or a 900. And I've had many such opportunities to celebrate that with people. People celebrate in many different ways. Some people want the world to know. Others, it's a private, just being happy to have reached a milestone. So that's fundamental to listing. That's just a quick look at the current status of the South African Listing Club, as opposed, just because I want to give some attention to this, because I think most Southern African birders are more focused on Southern Africa, not South Africa. Okay, and then we just can deviate a little bit and talk about Birding Big Day. The Big Birding Day is certainly something that BirdLife has done a fantastic job in promoting. And I describe Birding Big Day as a day of ecstasy. I can remember having done it very competitively about 13 times, and much more in a much more laid back way a few more times. Those competitive days were literally one of the most exciting days of the year, or if not the most exciting day of the year. And it was this idea of a full self-indulgent experience of total birding, where there were no other interruptions, there was no question that there was anything else that could take away from the priority of birding, and that one would be going flat out to find as many birds as possible. The thrill of the chase, and over the years, how do we get a bigger total became the sort of focus of this. So one spoke about the competitive edge and how one could do better than one already did. And so what has happened is that for the top teams, that competitive edge has led to the most ridiculous amount of research and preparation to the nth degree, as if someone is going to the Olympics to shoot in an air rifle event. The Birding Big Day teams will spend as much time training as an Olympic athlete does at their particular event. In the latter years, more recently, Birdlasser has revolutionized Birding Big Day in Southern Africa. I'm not sure if this has happened elsewhere. I think eBird has also revolutionized many of the days, in the sense that you can see live what is happening as you go along, which has got its pros and cons. So, I think some skepticism sometimes. This team suddenly saw this bird, and we were there like a minute ago, and we didn't see it. So where did they see it? And you have lots of these sort of questions going backwards and forwards. But to go back to the regional challenges and just talk about, this is a certificate that was issued because, of course, this is pre smartphones and pre apps, pre WhatsApp, and pre basically the internet was used a little bit for this. But at the end of the day, the recognition for that challenge. So this was something that a couple of people from the Pretoria Bird Club, in those days it was called the Pretoria Bird Club, now BirdLife Northern Gauteng, thought up in terms of promoting the region. And the thinking was, people go birding, they go on birding holidays, and they travel hundreds of kilometers, and they go and look for birds which are actually found fairly close to home. And I think in those days, if you're talking 1990s, very little was known of the wider Gauteng area in terms of the bird life, the species that were available, and so on. And so, I mean, I remember being involved in a controversial discussion on SA BirdNet, where someone put a report up on what they'd seen on a trip to Kruger National Park, which is, 5 hours drive from Gauteng. And the report was really all birds that they could have seen in Gauteng. And I know I got myself into big trouble because I said something that was maybe a little bit unkind about wasting fuel. But the long and short of it was, there was a discussion, I think, about the notion that if you look at the actual biodiversity of places close to home, there's a lot of magnificent resources. So that was the idea of this was to provide a challenge that would motivate people to get out and bird locally. And it grew from the desire to get people to become citizen scientists as well. So it was called the Birding Challenge, and this was the initial format that it took, was just the Pretoria area. But there was a lot of discussion, and it also it overlapped with the Pretoria Conservation Challenge, which was actually a precursor to the South African Bird Atlas project. So this was an atlasing project involving a slightly different protocol from current SABAP. So triads, 1/9 of a degree square. But that database has close to 6,000 records, and there's a lot of good data. It was in 2006, of course, SABAP 2 was developed, which launched in 2007. And that protocol then became the dominant protocol that was used. So this mother of regional challenges, because it did predate most of the regional challenges, was actually launched in 2000. So it's 24 years old as of now. And it's defined as an area of 100 kilometers from Pretoria and 100 kilometers from Johannesburg. So that explains why Trevor Hardaker didn't have Gauteng as a region, because at that time, I think over certainly the first 10 years of this project, this was dominant among all the Pretoria and Johannesburg bird clubs, and they all mostly people birded according to this particular strange shape. And the reason for this is that Gauteng itself is this little area in the middle, is rather small, and it sort of almost excludes a lot of really great habitat and biodiversity that lies just outside of the provincial boundary. So instead of taking a province, it was 100 kilometers. And there's a leaderboard from way back 2014. I think it's misnamed Gauteng Gauteng. It should be wider Gauteng. And the top totals, I think Johnny Wilson's set a record, something close to 430 species for the year in the wider Gauteng area. Just to mention that we also had this was also online, so there was a computer, a website, and you could log your totals there, and there was a website list that showed on the internet, and that was thanks to Kevin Ravno, GBird, as his organization was called. And then In 2015, this map was floated by Dewald Swanepoel, and he just drew a map and he put it on the internet. And at that particular point, there were no other challenges. There was only South Africa, Southern Africa, and wider Gauteng. There were provincial lists, but they weren't, I don't think they were a big deal at that stage. They hadn't really taken off. But what happened after this was there were folks in the Eastern Cape and Durban and Cape Town particularly that had got on board, and they started driving these challenges locally. Then Birdlasser was launched in August of 2014, and I think Birdlasser as a platform enabled all these different challenges. And if you look at it now, there's a challenge for virtually every province, every major city, and then there are also a whole lot of other African challenges, East African challenges, and there are a number of challenges internationally. And what this basically means, for those who don't know Birdlasser, is that you log your birds. So if you go on a business trip to Australia, you log your birds. The app gives you a national list for Australia, and you might find that you're in New South Wales, and you log your birds, and you can just join at any time. You can join a New South Wales regional listing challenge, and automatically, because the database has the GPS coordinates or the latitude and longitude of all your sightings, it will allocate your sightings to all the regions that are defined on the database. And it makes it painless. So what this has meant is that it's become very easy. It used to be a bit of a pain to take part in wider Gauteng. You had to have a map, you had to have GPS, your Garmin, and you were taking a waypoint and then trying to work out, was this inside or outside? And people were asking each other, where does the boundary end? Is the spot inside or outside? Now there's none of that. It's all automated. The artificial intelligence inherent in Birdlasser takes the coordinates and it allocates your sighting to the province. You do get some funny things along the border. So I remember in being at one of the lodges on the Caprivi, on the Kavanga, looking over to Angola, and we definitely weren't in Angola, but all our records were allocated to Angola. And the reason for that is you can't code or program a national border with every little twist and turn. It becomes too data intensive. So it's a rough thing, but it's fairly easy to fix if you follow the tutorials on how to move your records into the right country. So just to go back to South Africa, the South African Bird Atlas project, this took off in 2007. And it's been the major, let's say, for the last 15 years, the major focus of citizen science in the region. I think these days, eBird, run by the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology, is catching up, or maybe even taking over, in terms of people feeling that they are not documenting their sightings as a contribution to science. So what's fascinating to me about this is that the South African Bird Atlas project fairly soon, because of the age of the internet, Michael Brooks, the data manager, together with the steering committees, came up with different ways to motivate people to participate. And in the early days, what they did was they had a leaderboard, which was very obvious, easy to see on the website, of who had submitted the most cards. And that also was broken down by month. So how many cards did you submit this month? January, February, March, April, what's your total? You could see, okay, I'm lagging behind because somebody submitted a lot more cards than me in February. But if I look at March, I actually submitted the most cards of anyone in South Africa. So there was this leaderboard, and that was I think it was a great inspiration to a lot of leading atlases, because there was a whole community of people doing this. And obviously recognition, pride in how many cards have you submitted. This is way back. I think Vincent Parker is now probably 3,000. Vincent Parker, I used his milestone award because Vincent Parker is a well-known citizen scientist. He's probably the only person to have ever taken his entire pension and said, I'm going to spend my pension on atlasing the remotest parts of the region, which is the Karoo. So he spent the last couple of the years traveling the Karoo and being a citizen scientist. So he reached 400 cards, I think, way back in 2014. But just to go back to the leaderboard, and I don't have a copy of the leaderboard. What happened, the problem with the leaderboard is it actually did create some, unfortunately, human behavior is on a bell curve. So you get the normal response to a competitive situation, and you get what you would call just, good human behavior. But there's always somebody sort of out on the edge of the bell curve who will do something weird or something crazy. And there was actually the suspicion that there was some rather strange data being entered just so that people could propel themselves to the top of the leaderboard. So it's a bit like cheating in golf. You're essentially cheating yourself. And I'm sure it's an absolute minority, less than 1%. But unfortunately, that's a reality. So, and I raise it here because it is an issue of being highly competitive in any sort of challenge. It is a reality. Yeah, sorry, I'm going on. So the other thing that happened with SABAP 2 is the development of regional challenges in SABAP 2. So this is a map from the project as at I think it's 6th of September 2013, and that is 4DG, which stands for 4 degrees green. So the green cards have got 7 pentads, I think, 7 cards done. Orange cards have got 3, so I think it's 5 or 6, I can't remember. So the aim of this was to take these 4-degree blocks, 144 pentads in each, and turn them green. So which means this pentad here up in the top left, you have to literally go to that pentad and do 5, 6 full protocol cards. And I was involved in this project, and it was very exciting just seeing the commitment and the dedication, and how it went on. And there's just some of the stats that were put up on 2013. The change from 6th to the 10th September, 1.65 increase. So there was a lot of this going on. 4 degrees green, I think, was the first one, and then there were different challenges that started in different parts of the country. And then, so I think what I'm saying here is that citizen science benefited from gamification, from focused challenges which put in targets and which gave people recognition for their contribution. So even now, the Gauteng challenges on Facebook, there are regular updates with who has submitted, who the people that are participating, who the people that have submitted the cards, and what are they contributing. And that's a very fundamental part of why these challenges work. Everybody needs recognition for what they do. I think it's a fundamental human need. I don't think we should be shy about it. But that can be different from being highly competitive on an individual basis, and I'll come back to that. I think everyone is competitive as well, even those who say that they're not competitive in a particular realm are probably just not that competitive because either they can't be competitive in that realm or they want to be competitive in some other realm. But I think it is the nature of it's part of human nature that we are competitive to some degree. So coming back to the present now, so what we have here is this is a map of the Old Pretoria East Pentad Challenge. And I'll come back to that. So what we saw increasingly with Birdlasser helped promote this in South Africa, is these regional challenges. And we saw massive attention around Pretoria city boundary, the city of Cape Town last year, to coincide with the anniversary of the city of Cape Town. And that became a major focus for Cape Birders. And phenomenal birds were found within the city limits that wouldn't have been found otherwise. So one of the big motivators, and I think it comes through the surveys as well, is that local pentad challenges get people out searching for the difficult, the rare, the unexpected, and also getting to know their habitats, getting to know the location. So this is a phenomenal. The one I've got on the screen is a phenomenal Victoria Old East pentad challenge. I think I'll show the leaderboard later on. This massive, these are actually a whole bunch of the participants' pins. So if this is a private challenge. It's not open to the public, but if you live in the area and you want to join, get hold of Philip Kalinikos, I think Institute at BirdLife, and they'll add you to the challenge. And then that means you can see what other birders have seen. Your sightings start appearing. You can see how you're doing in this small area. And this is basically the central urban part of Pretoria, although it's got a couple of biodiversity gems like Localised. Here's Moreleta Kloof Reserve. It's got the National Botanical Gardens. It's got Fairy Glen Nature Reserve. It's got Groen Kloof. So it's got some really nice sites within it. And yeah, so there's been a lot of focus on that. Just to go back and just to mention one thing that has come up in all the discussions that I've had, and that is that COVID in 2020 has actually played a major role in stimulating these kinds of local challenges. So as you remember, with COVID, we had the lockdown. You couldn't leave you couldn't leave your house, you couldn't leave your area, then you couldn't leave your province. And it created a massive desire to get out, go birding, go get into different areas. And I think it prompted all sorts of different local and regional challenges to start with. You know, I think people may remember there was sort of the house sitting challenge where basically, how many birds could you see from your garden? And I think the late and great Joe Grossel, you know, was the leader on that whole project, seeing some phenomenal number. I don't remember. I think something like 250 species from the roof of his house in Polokwane over a specific period of time. So this is the leaderboard for the Old Pretoria East Challenge, which is running this year. And those folks are pretty serious about it. They get out. They've got different groups that they share sightings, etc. Or you know, and they go after all the specials. And they found some phenomenal things in the area. So what it's done is really promoted a lot more birding in the area, in those local nature reserves, etc., which I think is fundamental. And then more specifically, there's been a lot of local and pentad challenges. So this is even on a smaller scale of the pentad 5 minutes by 5 minutes. And there's two specific ones here that I want to talk about that I'm familiar with. There's the Foels Wonderboom pentad, which is Pretoria. It's actually this pentad here, the Cinneville, Redfontaine, the National Zoological Gardens. It's the central pentad. It's basically mostly an urban pentad, but it's got the Magaliesberg, which is accessible at Wonderboom. And, you know, it's just, I'm not very active, but I see just the excitement of seeing special birds and how much time people spend out in the field in that one specific, or those few specific natural areas that they've got. And I think it adds immensely to the lives of those individuals, because they've got a place locally where they go birding and they're part of a community. They get to learn so much. You just see the people coming on in terms of their knowledge of the birds, the seasonality of species, where to look for what, birding skills, how to find alpine swifts, how to find green sandpipers on the local rivers, you know, and makes them adventurous. Because to go on some of the local rivers in Pretoria looking for green sandpipers, you know, it's not a pristine nature reserve, it's a smelly urban river. And then the second one I want to talk about and specifically mention Peter and Janelle Verster, who are absolute legends in the notion of a pentad challenge, a big pentad bash, you know, where you take a pentad and you go full out for 5 days and you try and see how many species you can get. And I think many people around the region will attest that when Peter and Janelle arrive in your area and they say they're going to give up one of your pentads a shot, you know that means that whatever's the highest total that's ever been recorded there is not going to be close to what they get. And it's a sense of you know, I think it's just a different kind of game that Peter and Janelle play. It's one of dogged commitment. So they say, let's do this pentad. We're going to do it for 5 days. They often bring in a lot of their friends. So at times it's quite sociable and they have different people coming and going. Most people cannot spend 5 solid days like birding in a pentad, but they literally do spend 5 days and they go to the nth. So I know that down in one of the famous Cape pentads, I think it was Plettenberg Bay, Pitt and Janelle got a pelagic boat. They went out to sea. They went into right to the edge of the pentad and they did chumming. And they picked up a couple of storm petrels and things, which the people who'd been doing the pentad for years, like literally couldn't believe. So there's a kind of competitiveness there, but it's a competitiveness based on nature, based on finding more treasures, on exploring the boundaries of a pentad. A pentad is like 9 kilometers square. So it's a huge area, 72 square kilometers approximately. Exploring it to the hilt. I've participated. What they also do in this pentad, and I think it's worth considering for other small local areas of pentad groups, is they have pentad challenge days. So these are normally a day in which they say, let's pick 17th of October. It's a Saturday. And we invite everybody to atlas the pentad. There's always the undercurrent of citizen science and atlasing. Not everybody submits their cards and atlases, but a lot of people do. So they will get 30 or 40 people together, and then they will always, usually they'll say, we're all going to bird, and then they allocate, everybody gets allocated an area. So you get very thorough coverage of the whole pentad and the habitats. But then you also have a social element. So in that course of the morning, you'll get together at the clubhouse, you know, at the golf estate, and you'll just have a drink together and have a kuier and meet everybody and meet all the birders you haven't met. So there's this tremendous social bonding and makes everybody feel part of the group. But then after that, the real hardcore people will go out and they will carry on for the rest of the day and they'll try and get as big a total. And the one I participated in was last year or the year before. You know, it really produced a lot of SABAP data. There were, I think, something like 11 full protocol cards submitted and good cards. And actually got me to do a card for the pentad, which I haven't done for a long time. That's my neighbor's neighboring. That's certainly something that's worth considering doing in these other pentad challenges. Can't speak much about the other ones because I don't know about them, but I know that there are quite a number of these, and they're all private challenges. So you won't find them on Birdlasser, but if you ask, I think, Instructive or ask the atlases through SABAP if there's a local pentad group or pentad challenge in your area. That's what it's about. And then there are different platforms. There are a number of different platforms. So this is window birding. Dave Winter, very interesting concept. It's basically a listing app, but it's got some interesting elements. I just had a look and I've logged some birds on it. And so it's kind of, it lists very much like eBird. It's easy to list your birds. It gives you, wherever you are, it automatically gives you a list of target species. But what I found interesting about it is it's kind of integrated with social media. Sorry, so I haven't got didn't put the right image in. But when you look at a particular area, that's the Cape. Initially, you just see there's 24, there's 11. These are all people that are birding in this particular time frame. And you can drill down and you can find there's Robert Elliott. What did he see yesterday in Witwatersrand, Cape Town? And then you follow other birders. And wherever you follow, those folks come up on your feed. So obviously, I followed people like Mike Buckham, who really, seem to be birding every single day in the Cape. And they've got a great community going. And this app is a mainly Southern African app at this stage. And interesting concept. Initially I thought, well, I combine it with social media. I mean, haven't we got enough social media? But I'm not sure that that's actually not a very novel, revolutionary idea, because the problem is social media is in so many different places. So, you go birding and you log, but nothing's really connected. So this is automatically taking what you see. And window birding has all these filters. So if you're out birding, somewhere, it's going to select what are the special birds, what are the more unusual birds, in that area. Red-breasted sparrowhawk in the Cape Peninsula is, always a special. So it will highlight that and show that to the people that are following, and there you are birding. So it's kind of like I'm birding, and everybody who's following me can see what I'm doing and what I'm seeing. Whereas Birdlasser, you basically, if you're part of a challenge, your numbers are increasing on the challenge, and a person can drill down and see what's the latest thing that you've seen. So I think Birdlasser has, and I think there's this is obviously debate. Birdlasser has taken a great deal of care with the notion of privacy, that the data that birders collect should be private, and it's their private data. Obviously, I mean, it's your choice. So I don't fully understand Bindo because I haven't been working with it long enough. But I'm sure they can clarify for anybody who's interested. Just how does privacy work? Whether you can, whether everything you do is open to all the people who follow. Well, there actually is there is actually a privacy setting, so you could do all your birding and not have anybody following you want. And also, I was quite impressed with the export functions to both SABAP and to eBird. So there was, one could really, export your data very easily to SABAP and eBird, which I think is great. Then I'm going to jump. Sorry, this is jumping around a little bit. The other app I looked at was an international app, which is Birder, which is obviously, it's a global app, and it's received a lot of publicity around the world. Similar to Bindo in the sense that there's a lot of social media type component also integrated into Birder. I think if you want to use it properly, you have to pay for it. So I'm busy doing a trial and checking it out, seeing how it works. I'm not so sure about the integration with citizen science, because to me, I've got to say, as a keen citizen scientist, it's one of the frustrating things that so many people log so much useful, interesting data, and it's nowhere. If you report something on Facebook, you report something in your app, or you log it on your robots, it never goes anywhere. You might as well just delete it. It's pointless, except for your own list and your own satisfaction. It makes no contribution whatsoever to the community of knowledge out there. It makes no contribution to scientific. It's not of any interest. It's of no value to anybody. So what to go back to Birdlasser, what Birdlasser has got is causes. So they've got causes. So the causes are things like threatened species. So you can opt in or opt out, and I think a lot of people I know have opted in, which means that if you see a Rudd's lark or a secretary bird, Lapid-faced vulture, or a ground hornbill, or any endangered species, that data automatically goes to BirdLife. And I had a chat to Ernst Retief at BirdLife the other day, and I mean, I think he could just confirm that data is incredibly. They get a lot of data from Birdlasser, from people, which is really useful. It's useful data, and it's used, for EIA surveys in terms of, say, at the moment, wind farm or solar farm. Are there endangered species in the area? if you've just casually logged something while you were driving along the road on Birdlasser and you have threatened species cause enabled, then there you go. That is available to BirdLife. It's available to people doing EIA work, to the practitioners, the environmental practitioners. So it's of value. It is you've made a useful contribution. So that's very fundamental to me with this whole discussion is what is the relationship between these apps and these challenges and the contributions to citizen science. And I heard an interesting perspective, in fact, from Peter Verster, who I was talking about earlier. And he was saying that he says to young birders starting out, he says, yeah, when you start off in birding, you can be a user. In other words, you can use everybody's data to plan your trips, to know what to look for, to understand that it's knowledge. You're getting free knowledge, you're getting free information. You can go on SABAP, you can go on any one of the birding apps, you can go on Firefinch or Roberts or Sassel. All that data is generated by citizen science. All the maps come from other people. But he says, once you've become a reasonable birder and you've done your apprenticeship and you're now a birder, you must give back. You must give back to that database. Personally, the question of how much is the citizen science data used, I think is maybe another question, and that's not subject for this discussion. But to me, it's one of the most profound reasons why one keeps records, is because if you don't keep records, you're not contributing to knowledge, even your own knowledge. So if you keep regular records, if you go, say, out to a local nature reserve, and you keep regular records over a long period of time, then that is very useful because it enhances your own knowledge. But if you submit it to a citizen science platform, eBird or SABAP, I think are the two we're talking about here, in terms of birds, which is the biggest and have the biggest databases. If you submit it to one of those own pentad data, you can analyze it because it's all there in a usable form. It's incredibly valuable. It's incredibly useful, and it's very, very interesting. So that's what I would say about the citizen science data. Why do people get involved in challenges? Why are people competitive? Why do people bird in the first place? So this is from another talk I did on the birding mind, and these are different prototypes of birding. So there's these different aspects of why we bird. And I've always thought I'm a combination of a collector, adventure, sport, which is maybe the competitive side where you want to go in, and then the aesthetic side, and maybe the leisure side as well, because there was a wonderful talk, conservation conversations last night, BirdLife South Africa, on the psychological benefits of birding, or among other things, the psychological benefits of birding. And there's so much research that shows when people get out into nature and they listen to sound, even if they're not birders, it has a profound impact on the psyche. It's an incredible thing to help with stress, to lift the spirit, to make you a happier person. So it's a very important part of birding. But at the same time, we are, as humans, we are goal-oriented beings. And therefore, the thing of being competitive and having a target and also comparing our target with other people is absolutely normal. There's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. A collector comes back to the list and how many have I seen, where, that's in the old days, everyone used to keep their lists in the old field guides, mostly in old Newmans. There must be thousands of Newmans field guides, and I think around the world, different field guides filled with notes. And that is your collection of experiences. You can go back to your field guide, your old field guide, and you can look it up, and there you will see, this date. I mean, I can tell you, I can remember certain sightings. Not that I kept records, but there's certain sightings that absolutely stand out in one's life, and one never forgets them. And, you know, one was when I was 12 years old in Botswana and I saw my first white-bellied sunbird. You know, it was just the thing, it just blew me away, absolutely. And I somehow just, that experience stands out. So that's both the, I think, are those who really bird out of a caring for nature, who are more maybe more conservation focused fundamentally. They want to make a contribution. And certainly, in terms of the little survey I did, there were quite a lot of people that said, I do citizen science, but I don't take part in challenge. I don't want to be competitive. I just want to make a contribution. And that's where I get my reward in my heart. That's what makes me feel good, is that I'm out there and I'm contributing and I'm making a contribution. So I think basically what I'm going to do is move on to some of the survey issues and show you a few charts and graphs. And then we're going to come back to talk to some of these issues about, you know, the different groups. Issues that have come up out of this whole discussion, you know, which I think I raised in the outset. So I'm just going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to stop. I think I have to stop sharing and then just share something else. Yeah. Okay. So this is okay. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to start sharing again. Okay. So this is just for your interest, and as I said, thank you everyone for at such short notice completing the survey. I'm quite blown away by the response. So this was a Google Forms thing, and so look, and it's not a particularly well designed survey. There's lots of different aspects. There's lots of things, but basically, if I look at what is the most important reason, motivation for participating in local regional birding challenge, gives a focus for my birding, the game aspect of living, be involved in a community, more cost effective than focus locally in listing birds over a bigger area, the joy of regular accessible birding. So focus for my birding, being involved in a community, and the joy of regular accessible birding being the top ones. Learn more about the local birding coming in a little bit lower, and then the game aspect. I don't know if that's just because people are shy to say they like games and they like competitiveness. And then, so I'm really showing just the ones where I've asked. I gave people a number of choices, and they said what were the benefits. I've connected with the community. The biggest benefit is I've discovered so much more about local birding hotspot species. That's the most popular one. And then the citizen science aspect is high as well. So those are the two that come to the fore. And then it's just more exciting to list birds towards a meaningful goal with an element of competition. That's kind of double-edged question, which probably needs to be rephrased. Give me a reason to get out more often. I've connected with a community. So these communities are very important as well, important for my sanity. And it provides a forum and a platform to share my sightings and photos. So just to comment, I think Bindo and Birda very, very much focused on visual imagery. So in other words, that is social media, that visual imagery is very, very important. So I was a little bit naughty here in terms of the questions. The downsides or disadvantages of these birding challenges. Makes people too competitive was actually not very high. More pressure on endangered species, people worried about that. And then the photographic challenges led to invasive, disturbing behavior. So if people are desperate to get a photo, that tends to be where you're more likely to just need to get closer and be more invasive. And then I think there was some skepticism. There were a couple of people that participated that don't participate in challenges, and they said doesn't really contribute to citizen science. and make people too competitive was another one. So that's just a summary there of the main points, and I'm going to come back to those and talk a little bit about them by way of closing. Okay, so just a little bit about the community. How often do people bird? Every day was 22%. Once a week was 27%. Regularly, but not every week, was about 40%. And then these other folks did birding less. And then we had, in terms of how long have people been birding, less than 5 years, 5 to 10 years, 10 to 20, longer than 20 years, and 35 and 65. Okay. So we've got someone who's been around for a while. And look, I mean, the dominant, because of the South African community, and also I think who this went to, the most common platforms are Birdlasser and eBird, and then a lot of people are also atlases. And the different projects, Cape Town Club, Big Year, Southern Africa, KZN, Tequini, Zululand, Durban, Maritzburg, 150K challenge, Zululand 15K challenge. Lots of different, turning Gauteng green, etc. And then there's lots of these 106 responses that most of them are Birdlasser, and second followed, sorry, most of them are SABAP, some Birdlasser and eBird, although Birdlasser is not on itself a citizen science platform. So that's basically that. I'm going to stop sharing and then just go back to my one-page set of summary again. Go back to that. Right. So this is basically the last conclusion, or the conclusion point. The reasons to be involved, first of all, and I think we've kind of covered it there. There's literally this very strong sense that these local challenges really help people learn more about the environment that they're in. They learn more about the birds. They're involved in a community, and it provides a reason for people to get out and go birding. So they're just a fantastic way to promote birding. And I think that is, in summary, the value in growing birding. Then the question of harm to the birds. So a couple of people, I mean, I put it in as a question mark. So I think the example would be that you've got a bird which is maybe not very common. I can give an example, maybe Knysna warbler Cape. And now that you've got all these challenges, people that have seen it for a lifer, now, I'm just using, I'm thinking of Knysna warbler because I think it's one species that was possibly harmed by overbirding, and it's kind of disappeared from places and made a comeback after being left alone. I think we can talk about African grass owls in the wider Gauteng context, and something like Botha's lark, and the question of what has been the impact of birders. In fact, Botha's lark is a good one, because I did have a conversation with Annelien at BirdLife about this. And I think BirdLife is particularly concerned that Botha's lark in particular, there's been, because it's so hard to see, everybody who comes birding in the region, they want to see it the most of all the birds. So it's literally becomes the number one priority. And given the way that birding has evolved, they want to take photographs, and they want to get good photographs. And so this has led to an inordinate amount of pressure on very, very few birds, almost none. In fact, this bird is now critically endangered, threatened with extinction. And I think we need to open a conversation about the fact that birds which are that far gone, or that scarce, and therefore that sensitive. The fact, if there were 20,000 Botha's larks, the behavior of birders, the way trying to get close, and photographers trying to get close, wouldn't be an issue, because there's lots of other birds that are not being disturbed. But in the case of Botha's lark, there's only one or two pairs that all this focuses on, and we don't really know how many other pairs there are. And I think there's a very strong case to be made for saying Botha's lark is taken off the list. It's taken off. It's literally a bird that is out of bounds. We don't go look for it anymore unless we're part of proper scientific project. You know, as part of the conservation effort, we don't ticket for any challenges. We don't ticket for any year lists, life lists, nothing. It's literally taken off the boundary. So, but I mean, yeah. So I think everyone understands what I'm saying. That essentially, that the local challenges can put a lot of pressure on local birds. I think one example that I've been given in Pretoria East by Dirk Human is in relation to some of the breeding sparrowhawks. So they're not rare, but they're not very common, and they're extremely localized. So they breed in specific places in Pretoria area, and there've been allegations that birders are literally overdoing it in terms of playing tape playback at nest sites and harassing the birds to such an extent that some of those breeding sites actually become unsuccessful. So that is an issue. Then to competitiveness, a lot of discussion about the notion of competitiveness. What is competitiveness in the first place? And very often I think that, you know, we're all involved in birding. Birding is a hobby. It's something we do, and they're the very personal, private benefits we get out of it, the soul enriching benefits, the de-stressing benefits, and just the joy, the sheer joy and wonder of seeing birds in nature. But then we all, especially if we're involved in any sort of project or activity where we're contributing, we want some recognition for that. And I think that's where the certificates I showed earlier for SABAP has really filled a gap and done a wonderful initiative, that the system automatically generates these certificates for all the milestones. And people feel good about that. It makes them feel good, makes them feel recognized, etc. But we're all, a lot of us are also competitive. You know, we've all done birding big days, or I've certainly done plenty of birding big days. And we want to do extremely well. We want to try and see as many birds as we can. And the same applies to the regional, national, and local challenges. There's great pleasure and joy in being, you know, at the top of that leaderboard. But is that really a negative? I think, as I pointed out in an example of SABAP, it can be a negative in some cases, but I think it's actually very, very uncommon that it's a negative. I think, to be honest, also people that complain about competitiveness, they don't like other people being competitive, but maybe it's just because they're not in the space of being competitive. So it's something they can't really relate to as individuals, which is fine. So discussion on this issue, and something that I've actually omitted to include in the slides, is the whole notion of Atlas bashes or citizen science bashes, which are a communal effort to collect a lot of data together with a group. And, you know, I was involved in a number of these from during SABAP, and, you know, would like to do more. They're absolutely wonderful. But what you do is you identify a part of any region where there's not a lot of data with the data system, and you say, let's go there as a group and go and do this project to try and see how much data we can collect. And I had discussion actually with Peter Verster also about this, where he was involved with one of these with Jason Boyce. And what struck us both in this is just how much birders enjoy this process of being part of these bashes and how committed they are. So we both had the same experience, in that we had this base. Everybody got allocated the areas. They went out, they gathered all their citizen science data, but we had discussions about, don't come back too late, you know, it's dark, this is a day, could be, you know, it's safer to come home at sunset, etc. And when I got back to Freiburg, as the case was, I mean, there was nobody there. Every single team of atlases had basically decided they'd rather finish more data collection and come back later. And the remarkable thing was that the social aspect of that whole event was kind of sabotaged because everybody just worked so hard. And these are all just volunteers having fun. But everybody talks about it, talks about what a great time they had. So to come to the competitiveness thing, I wonder if these what have I stopped my yep. What's happened there?
It looks like you stopped sharing.
Okay, sorry, I'm finishing up here. Let me just share that again. Sorry, sorry, I just closed it. The local challenges can learn from Atlas bashers, that if you do things together, so, go and do a bird survey of your nature reserve, your bird park, your natural area, and have events which have a social element. They have a competitive element as well, because everyone's going to go out and try and collect as much data as they can, and you can have a leaderboard, who saw the most birds and all of that. But it's something you do together as a team, do together as a community. And those are really important to build the community aspect of birding. And I think with the increasing dominance of social media in the world, things where people get together and they have real face-to-face contact and they really work together are sorely needed. It's as a counter to just scrolling through hundreds of strangers' feeds and looking at what everybody in the world's doing. So that's really important for citizen science. And then, in relation to citizen science, I think we can do a lot more with the apps. I think I'm hoping this leads to more conversation with the folks developing the apps to find more ways of encouraging people to contribute to citizen science. I didn't talk enough about eBird. eBird has got a lot of fantastic initiatives. They just had the Global Migratory Birds Day the other day, which is always a huge event. I wasn't involved this year, but I've done it most years, and that's, even though it's very Northern Hemisphere focused, it's a great day where countries compete in different countries. I know Mozambique came 7th out of all the countries in terms of the amount of data that was collected. But these are all examples of the gamification of birding, and making it positive, making it worthwhile, making it mean something, which is ultimately my main message tonight, is enjoy your birding, go out, be part of the community, but make a difference. So I think I'm going to end there, and I'm going to stop sharing, and then we can have some discussion if we have time.
Thanks very much, Etienne. That was a really interesting presentation. I was sitting here quietly in the background listening, and I'm always amazed by the way in which you look at things differently than most other people do, and it's good to see that somebody is thinking about this to a level of detail and depth. And now we have some comments and questions. Let's see. Do you want me to read them, or are you going to do it?
Yeah, I'm just seeing Philip Kalinikos about, let me see, talking about the code of ethics. David Winters just talking about Bindo, very much a conservation first app, so people must learn more about Bindo birding. Okay, so he's answered the question about privacy, which I was raising about that particular app, that you can make your profile private. I think BirdLife, Philip's talking about the code of ethics. Yes, Philip, absolutely, but I mean, the code of ethics, I think we all know, and it's been going round and round and round over the years. So, sorry, I've got someone talking in the background. Yeah. Is it still possible to contribute to the survey? Yeah. Where do we put the survey? It's on Google Forms. Can I put it in the chat?
Put the link in the chat. Yes.
you know, those surveys are very long.
But you can put the link in the chat.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the chat. Yeah. Okay. I'll do that, Tony. So yeah, just also to say, this is also really much a start. There were lots of other things I wanted to talk about, you know, like the impact of social media on birding, because a lot of this interacts with social media. And we know the research about the negative effects of social media. It's almost to me that the very positive aspects of birding, you know, in nature and being out in nature, are somehow contradicted by the negative aspects of being on social media a lot. And the two are almost in tension. I don't think we've got a lot of questions.
It seems not. You were so clear in everything.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I think it's you know, it's so, as you said, it's a sort of a strange topic, because we're thinking about this from the point of view of saying, how can we improve all of it, and make, from my agenda is to foster a conversation which gets those, and there's a lot of leaders in the birding community in different regions, different places, and people that develop apps internationally and locally, and bird clubs, birding organizations around the world. And there's just a question of how do we make it more positive for citizen science, and also more positive for the promotion of birding and for the enrichment of people's lives. That's what it's fundamentally about. So that's where I leave it, I think.
All right. If there are no more questions, then thank you very much, Etienne. Thanks for a great presentation. And for those who weren't able to make it.
So if you click on that link on your computer, it should take you directly to the form. And then you can just complete it. I'm probably gonna edit the form a little bit, because I think, yeah, some of the questions are bit. It works. Okay, right. If
Etienne, why don't you make a little blog post on Learn the Birds?
Okay, we'll do that. Yeah, we can actually give the feedback properly.
Yeah,
but let's give a week or two for more answers, and maybe if we can also get some of our international folks to share it with their communities, we get, you know, different perspectives from different places on this issue. Because I'm afraid, yeah, mine is very parochial, very locally.
Cool. I think those who want it will have it by now. Yeah. So thanks again. Hopefully I'll see you sometime, Etienne. It's been a long time.
And see you in the field, and looking forward to seeing your data coming in.